From the story, do you recognize me, human? I'm your childhood neighbor, said the alien beauty. The stars outside the rescue ship blinked softly, like tiny promises in the dark. Inside, the medical bay was quiet. Machines beeped gently. Ellie lay on the soft bed, her green skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. Jack sat beside her, his hand wrapped around hers. They had survived, but nothing would ever be the same again. Ellie slowly opened her eyes. Her body was sore, her head heavy, but her mind was clear. "You're still here?" she whispered. Jack smiled. "I told you I wasn't leaving." She looked around the room. "Where are we?" "Safe," he said. "This ship's from a nearby human colony. My emergency signal finally reached someone." "We're heading there now." Lee tried to sit up, but Jack gently stopped her. "You need to rest. The dart, it almost stopped your heart." She looked at him. "But you brought me back." He nodded. "You brought me back to Ellie, back to feeling, back to hope." "I spent years thinking I'd never feel anything again." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I never stopped thinking about you, even when they tried to erase my memories. Your name stayed." Jack looked down. "Ellie, they'll come for you again, won't they?" Her voice became cold. "They won't stop." "Then we don't run anymore," he said. "We fight together." Ellie opened her eyes wide. "You mean that?" He nodded. "I've spent my life running from connection, from people. But now, I want something real. I want you." She smiled. "You always were too stubborn to give up." Jack leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "What happens now?" Ellie took a deep breath. "Now we go to the colony. I give them the map. We expose the Nerax. Free the others, and after that," her fingers curled around his hand, "then we live. Not in hiding, not in fear. Just live." 3 days later, they reached the colony. It wasn't much, just a cluster of buildings surrounded by a force field, but it was full of people, real people, smiling, laughing, alive. For Ellie, it was the first time in years she had seen kindness from strangers. The map she carried was decrypted by Earth Alliance agents. It revealed secret coordinates to over 12 hidden Nerax research sites. Rescue missions were already being planned. Jack stood proudly beside Ellie as she handed over the data chip. "You did it," Jack whispered to her. "No," Ellie said. Looking at him, "We did." That night, under the open sky, Ellie stood at the edge of the colony fence, staring at the stars. The same stars that once trapped her, now felt free. Jack walked up behind her. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking. About." She smiled softly. "Everything. Who I was, who I became, and now, who I choose to be." Jack stepped beside her. "You know who I see when I look at you?" She looked at him, curious. "I see. The girl who gave me her last piece of candy when I was sad. The girl who fell from a tree and laughed anyway. The girl who vanished and came back a warrior." Ellie's voice was gentle. "And I see the boy who never stopped waiting." They stood in silence for a while. Then she whispered, "Jack, may I stay?" He didn't answer with words. He just reached for her hand, pulled her close, and held her against his chest. "You were never meant to leave," he said quietly. And for the first time in 20 years, Ellie felt home again. Somewhere. In deep space, a broken bounty signal flickered weakly. The Nerax had lost their prize, but the galaxy had gained something stronger. A human and an alien, bound by the past, united by love, and ready for whatever came next. From the story, "Do you recognize me, human?" "I'm your childhood neighbor," said the alien beauty. The stars outside the ship stretched into long white lines as Jack's ship entered hyperspeed. For a moment, there was silence, no alarms. No hunters, no fear. But that peace didn't last long. Inside the ship, warning lights flashed again. The old screen flickered red with a sharp buzz. Power drain detected. Navigation system failing. Jack cursed under his breath. That hunter's tracker, it's still draining us. Ellie stood behind him, her arms crossed. They planned this. They want us to crash. They might get their wish, Jack muttered, trying to stabilize the controls. I'm rerouting auxiliary power to keep us in warp, but we'll need to drop out somewhere safe fast. Ellie scanned the system map. There's an old mining planet nearby, uninhabited, rocky terrain, no signals. Perfect place to hide, Jack said, gripping the wheel. Or die. With a loud jolt, the ship exited hyperspace and dropped into orbit above a rust-colored planet. The engines groaned as Jack manually guided the ship toward a canyon ridge. The ship scraped against sharp rocks before slamming into the dusty surface with a violent crack. Smoke filled the cabin. Systems went dark. Jack coughed. Well, we're alive. Barely, Ellie replied, opening the emergency vent. They stepped outside into blazing heat and sharp wind. The planet was dead. No plants, no water, just endless rust-red rocks stretching. In all directions, this place smells like iron and ghosts, Jack said. Ellie squinted into the horizon. We don't have long. The beacon is still active. Jack looked at her. So what now? Ellie held up a small scanner. We move. We find shelter, and we prepare. They walked across the rocky terrain in silence. Jack's boots crunched. On the brittle ground, Ellie moved like she belonged here, light on her feet. Alert. Every movement sharp and practiced. Jack struggled to keep up. You really did become someone else, he said. Ellie looked back at him. No. I became who I needed to be. They reached a ridge overlooking a jagged canyon. Below, they saw old mining equipment, long abandoned. That'll work, Jack said. We can hide there. They climbed down slowly. As they entered the rusted remains of the mining station, Ellie knelt beside a broken wall. This place. It reminds me of your backyard fort, she said softly. Jack smiled. Yeah, it reminds me of the time you dared me to eat dirt. You did it, she said, laughing for the first time in years. You dared me, Jack grinned. I had no choice. But the laughter died as a low hum filled the air. A drone? Ellie's face hardened. They're here. She pulled out a small energy blade, its soft blue glow lighting the shadows. Jack reached for a rusted pipe. Not much of a weapon, he muttered. Then, stay close, she said. The drone flew overhead, scanning the area. Ellie pulled Jack under a collapsed roof, just in time. The drone passed without seeing them, but not for long. They'll send ground units next, Ellie said. Can we take them? Jack asked. Maybe, she replied. But not here. We need to draw them away from the ship. Jack blinked. Why? It's already down. Ellie held up the crystal. Because of this. It's the map to the other labs. If they recover it, everything I escaped for is lost. Jack looked at her. Then let's finish what you started. An hour later, Ellie rigged a trap inside the mining structure using pieces of old tech and Jack's engineering tools. They placed a crystal inside a container on a high ledge, baiting the Nerex forces into the trap. Jack looked at her as she tightened the last cable. You're risking everything again. Ellie nodded. So are you. He hesitated. Then, said I always wondered what kind of woman you'd grow up to be. She turned to face him, and Jack smiled. Braver than me. Before she could reply, a sudden thud shook the ground. They looked up. A dark ship descended slowly into the canyon. A ramp lowered. 3 armored hunters stepped out, weapons raised. Jack whispered, Showtime. Ellie activated the trap with her wristband. Instantly, a wall of plasma energy surged across the mining structure. The hunters were caught off guard. 2 were thrown into the rocks. Stunned, but the third moved fast, too fast, RIVAK. He had come himself. Ellie's eyes narrowed. He's back. Rivak aimed a pulse cannon at her. You thought you could run forever? She didn't flinch. I didn't run. I returned. For all of them. The ground shook again as Jack fired up a leftover mining drill rig. It roared to life and sped toward Rivik, buying them seconds. Go. Ellie shouted. Jack grabbed the crystal and ran toward the side tunnel. Ellie stood her ground. Blade in hand, Rivik charged Dot from the story. Do you recognize me, human? I'm your childhood neighbor, said the alien beauty. The sky above the canyon turned dark red as the sun dipped behind the rocks, bleeding color across the broken landscape. Smoke from the earlier trap still floated in the air. It mixed with dust and fading plasma sparks. Jack had made it to the side tunnel dash barely but Ellie stayed behind. She stood in the open, facing Rivik the bounty hunter who never missed his target. Her blue energy blade hummed softly, glowing in the red haze. Across from her, Rivak raised his pulse cannon, eyes hidden behind his helmet's red visor. This ends now, he growled. Ellie didn't move. Yes, it does. Without another word, Rivak fired. She leaped to the side, rolled, and sprinted toward him. The blast missed her by inches, slamming into a rock wall behind, exploded in a shower of debris. Ellie's blade slashed across Rivak's chest plate, leaving a burning line but not deep enough. He grabbed her wrist, twisted hard. She winced, but didn't scream. She brought her knee up, hitting him in the ribs, then flipped back, landing in a crouch. He smiled behind the mask. You were always too emotional. That's your weakness. Ellie stood tall. No, that's my strength. She rushed him again, her blade clashing with his arm guard. Sparks flew. Each strike echoed like thunder in the canyon. Rivak was stronger, but Ellie was faster. Still, Jack watched from the tunnel entrance, heart pounding. He wanted to help. But he had no weapon, no training, just hope and love. Suddenly, Rivak managed to pin Ellie against a rock wall, pressing his cannon to her chest. You think you're a hero, he hissed. But you're just a failed experiment. Ellie didn't blink. Then let me show you what failure can do. With her free hand, she reached up and grabbed the wire on Rivak's shoulder. Armorand yanked. His power pack ripped loose. The suit hissed. The lights flickered. His strength dropped instantly. Ellie kicked him off and slammed her blade across his arm, disabling the cannon. Rivak stumbled back, off balance. She turned to run toward Jack, but Rivak wasn't done. He threw a small dart. It hit her back, pulsing with energy. She fell hard. Ellie, Jack shouted, running out from cover. Rivak turned toward him slowly. You, the human, the weak one. Jack stood over Ellie, shielding her body. Touch her again and I'll break you, Rivak laughed. With what? Words? Jack picked up a broken mining rod, metal, heavy, sharp at one end. With this, Rivak raised his arm. Jack didn't wait. He threw the rod like a spear. It hit Rivak in the side of his helmet hard enough to knock him back. Jack dropped to his knees beside Ellie. She was still breathing, but the dart had shocked her badly. He pulled it out and held her close. Her voice was weak. Jack, I'm here, he whispered. You're going to be okay. You shouldn't have come out. I couldn't leave you. She smiled faintly, still a terrible liar. Then, her hand slipped from his. Rivik stood again, slower now. Blood ran from his cracked helmet. Jack gently laid Ellie down and stood up. You want to take her, he said, his voice low. "You'll have to go through me." Ruvak stepped forward, but before he could strike, another sound filled the air. A ship, not Jack's. A small freighter burst through the clouds. One of Jack's emergency signals had finally been received. Help had come. The freighter's cannons roared, blasting the canyon. Rivik looked up too late. A laser hit near his feet, throwing him back into the rocks. Jack lifted Ellie into his arms and ran as the ship lowered a ramp. 2 rescue crew members jumped out and helped pull them aboard. Inside, Jack held Ellie close. As the ship lifted off, the sky outside was glowing red. And behind them, Rivak was gone, buried under flame and stone. Inside the medical bay, Ellie stirred. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Jack sat beside her, holding her hand. "You saved me," she whispered. Jack smiled through tired eyes. "You saved me. First, when we were kids, I never forgot that." Ellie looked at him. "I thought I lost myself." Jack shook his head. "You never did. You just needed someone to remind you who you are." She closed her eyes. "I'm glad it was you." Outside the window, the stars burned bright again. But for Jack and Ellie, only one star mattered, the one that led them back to each other. From the story, "Do you recognize me, human? I'm your childhood neighbor," said the alien beauty. Jack led Ellie through a dark hallway, past old engines and broken drones. The station groaned softly, as if it too knew something terrible was coming. Outside, the stars shone bright, but danger was already on its way. They entered an old cargo bay. Jack had converted into a hidden workshop. Old memories lined the walls: Earth photos, a broken toy ship, and a small sketch of a girl drawn in pencil. A girl with a bright smile and a scar above her eyebrow. Ellie stopped in front of the drawing. Her fingers trembled as she reached out. "You kept this?" she whispered. Jack nodded. "I drew it after you disappeared. I thought, if I remembered you hard enough, maybe you'd come back." Ellie didn't speak. She just stared at the image, her image captured by the boy she once knew. "You were more than just a neighbor," Jack said, walking closer. "You were my first real connection. And when you vanished, I stopped believing in people." Ellie turned around, "And now that I'm here, I'm not sure if I believe it yet," Jack admitted. "But I know I don't want to lose you again." Ellie looked down, her voice suddenly tight. "There's more I haven't told you, Jack." Jack paused. "What do you mean?" She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "I wasn't the only child taken that night." Jack's heart skipped. "What?" "There were others, children from other towns, their planets. The Nareks ran tests for years. Most of them didn't survive. I did, because I stopped fighting. I let them change me." Jack felt sick. "You mean you gave up?" "No," Ellie said softly. "I adapted. I pretended to be what they wanted. But deep down, I kept one part of myself hidden. You. That's how I stayed alive." Jack sat down, his head spinning. Ellie continued, her voice shaking. "They taught me how to fight, how to use alien tech. They gave me strength, speed, even knowledge of space warfare. I became something they could use. And then you escaped." Jack asked. Ellie nodded. "After I learned their secrets. After I found the map." Jack looked up. "Map." She reached into her suit and pulled out a small silver crystal. "This holds the coordinates to their hidden labs where they still keep other test subjects. Children, adults, even hybrids." Jack stared at the crystal. "You're not just running from them, you're trying to expose them." Ellie met his eyes. "I want to stop them, but I can't do it alone." Jack stood up and walked over. "Then you're not alone anymore." They stood together in silence. Two broken souls holding on to each other as the stars outside blinked quietly. Suddenly, Jack's comm unit beeped. He grabbed it. Unknown ship approaching, no clearance, no response. Ellie's face went pale. They found me. Jack looked. At the screen, fast ship, small crew. Definitely hunters. We need to leave, Ellie said quickly. Jack nodded. I have a ship docked below. It's old, but it runs. As they grabbed supplies, Ellie stopped and looked at him. Jack, if we do this, there's no turning back. He smiled faintly. You said they changed you, right? Taught you to fight. Yes, Ellie said, loading a plasma pack into his belt. They trained the wrong girl, because now she's on our side. She smiled, small, sad, and hopeful. And together, they ran toward the docking bay, where a broken ship waited to carry two childhood friends, now warriors, into the heart of a secret war. What they didn't know was that someone else had already boarded the ship, watching, waiting, listening from the story. Do you recognize me, human? I'm your childhood neighbor, said the alien beauty. The air inside the docking tunnel felt colder than before. Oh, Jack. And Ellie moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. They were heading toward Jack's old cargo ship, his only way off the station. But neither of them knew. Someone was already watching. Inside the ship, hidden in the shadows of the engine room, a tall figure stood motionless. Clad in black armor with glowing red lenses, the bounty hunter known as Rivak waited like a wolf. He had followed Ellie's energy signature across 2 star systems. And now, finally, he had her cornered. But Rivak didn't want to kill her. No, he wanted her alive. The Nerox had offered 10 million credits for her return. Alive, unharmed. Marked. That's single quotes as what she was now. Marked 1, a former test. Subject carrying classified DNA sequences, weapon-grade adaptability, and most of all, memories the Nerox didn't want released. He activated his silent blaster and waited in the shadows. Meanwhile, Jack and Ellie reached the ship's ramp. Jack tapped the panel. The ramp groaned open, slower than usual. I told you this thing's old, Jack joked nervously. Ellie gave a small smile. As long as it flies. They entered the main deck. Jack moved to the cockpit while Ellie stayed back, scanning the ship for anything off. Her instincts, sharpened through years of alien training, were whispering one thing. They are not alone. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. In the engine room, Rivak moved silently, placing a small tracking dart on the reactor core. Just as he turned to leave, Ellie's voice rang out sharp and cold. Come out. Jack froze in the cockpit. Who are you talking to? We're not alone, Ellie said, stepping into the shadows with confidence. Rivak stepped forward. His black armor reflected the dim lights. His voice was cold and metallic. Ilara of Sector 47. You are property of the Nerox Laboratories. Surrender now, and I will not harm the human. Jack stepped out from the cockpit, eyes wide. Who the hell are you? Rivak didn't even glance at him. Stay out of this, human. Ellie stepped in front of Jack. You'll have to go through me. Rivak raised his blaster. I was trained to hunt beings like you. You're not a child anymore. You're a threat. Ellie narrowed her eyes. You think I didn't plan for this? She pressed a small button on her wristband. Instantly, a shockwave burst from her armor, pushing Rivak back and frying the ship's lights. Sparks flew. The ship shook violently. Jack yelled, Ellie, what did you just do? He placed a tracker, she said. I overloaded it. But he's still here. The lights flickered. Rivak recovered quickly and fired. Ellie grabbed Jack and rolled behind the control panel. You need to fly us out of here, she said, voice calm but urgent. Now, Jack jumped into the pilot's seat and powered up the engines. It'll take 30 seconds. Ellie stood, facing the bounty hunter. Then, I'll buy us 30. Rivak charged again, but Ellie was faster now. She ducked, flipped, and kicked his blaster away. The weapon clattered across the metal floor. Rivak hissed. "You've been trained well." "I had good reason," she replied. "You monsters made me." The ship's engines roared. Jack shouted, "Ellie now!" She jumped back just in time. The cargo bay doors slammed shut behind her. Jack pulled the ship into the sky, breaking away from the station. But Rivak wasn't done yet. He had planted a second beacon deep in the floor of the cargo bay, far behind them. A message was already being sent. Subject located. Prepare for retrieval. In the cockpit, Ellie was quiet. She stared out the window at the stars rushing past. Jack looked over. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "That was just the beginning." "You think they'll come again?" "They always come," she whispered. "But next time, they won't be hunting just me. They'll be coming for you, too." Jack leaned back in his seat. "Then let them come." She turned her head, surprised. He smiled faintly. "You're not alone anymore, Ellie. Not this time." She looked at him for a long moment. The boy she once knew was still in there, and now he was willing to fight for her, but deep in her heart. Ellie knew things would get worse before they got better, because the Nareks didn't forget their creations, and they never let go of what they marked. From the story, "Do you recognize me, human?" "I'm your childhood neighbor," said the alien beauty. The space station hung silently above the desert moon. Inside Docking Bay 9, the only sound was the soft humming of machines and the slow footsteps of a man named Jack Marlowe. Jack was a human engineer. He had worked here alone for 5 years. No friends. No visitors. Just machines, wires, and silence. But today, something changed. A strange light blinked on his terminal. A ship had landed without warning. No code, no ID. Just silence. Jack picked up his plasma wrench and walked toward the docking platform. With caution, as the ship's ramp opened, steam hissed out. Jack raised his tool, expecting danger. Instead, a figure walked through the mist. It was a woman. She was tall and elegant, with glowing green skin and long black hair that shimmered like liquid night. She wore a sleek, silver bodysuit that hugged her perfect alien frame. But her most shocking feature were her eyes. Bright, deep, familiar. Jack's hand dropped to his side. The alien woman tilted her head and stepped forward. Then she spoke. In clear Earth standard, her voice soft and smooth. "Do you recognize me, human?" Jack's breath caught. That voice, that tone, that look. Something deep inside his memory began to stir. He started, his voice shaking. "Do I?" "No. You." She smiled, a little sadly, and pointed to a small scar on her left eyebrow. "This happened when I fell from your backyard tree," she said quietly. Jack took a step back. His heart raced. "No, that's not possible." The woman's eyes softened. "You called me Ellie. You used to sneak cookies for me when my mother wasn't looking. We built a fort behind the shed. I was 6, you were 8. Jack felt dizzy. "Ellie, but you disappeared. 20 years ago, you were just gone. Your family moved overnight, they said. They said we relocated," she finished, stepping closer. "But that's not what happened." Jack stared at her. His mind didn't want to believe it, but his heart already did. This alien woman, beautiful and otherworldly, was his childhood neighbor. The little girl next door who vanished one summer night. "How?" he whispered. "I was taken," she said. "Not by humans. By them. The Nareks, they studied Earth children. They wanted to see if any species had ... potential." Jack clenched his fists. They abducted you. Ellie nodded. I don't remember much at first, only pain, then tests, then training. I was raised on a different world. They changed me. I look like them now, but inside, me? Jack's voice cracked. Why come here? Her smile faded. Because you're the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered. You were kind. You protected me. I needed to see if you still remembered. He stared at her. This had to be a dream. But everything about her, the scar, her smile, the way she said his name was real. Suddenly, light alarm echoed across the docking bay. Jack turned to the console. Unauthorized tracking beacon. Someone followed you here. Ellie's eyes widened. No, they found me. Who? Jack asked, already moving. I escaped from them. They want me back. Jack looked at her. Then we need to hide you. Ellie stepped forward and grabbed his hand. It felt warm, real. You don't have to do this, she said softly. You don't even know me anymore. He squeezed her hand tightly. I know enough, he said, and I never forgot you. As the lights dimmed and footsteps echoed down the metal hallway, Jack pulled Ellie into a hidden maintenance tunnel. The hunt had already begun, but deep down, Jack knew this was no ordinary reunion. This was fate. From the story, do you recognize me, human? I'm your childhood neighbor, said the alien beauty. The narrow tunnel under the docking bay was cold and silent, but Jack's heart was anything but calm. He kept glancing back at the green-skinned woman beside Emily, the girl who once lived in the house next door. It's the same Ellie who vanished from Earth 20 years ago. Now, she was something else, something alien, but also, somehow, still her. They stopped behind a metal hatch, hidden deep beneath the station's power coils. Jack typed in an override code and opened a small room filled with old tools and spare parts. This place is off-grid, Jack said quietly. No sensors, no cameras, no signals. Ellie looked around, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Thank you, she said, sitting down on an empty crate. For believing me? Most people would have run. Jack leaned against the wall, still trying to understand everything. So, the Narax took you? He asked, his voice low. Ellie nodded slowly. Yes. One night, I was outside chasing fireflies. There was a sound, a high hum, a bright blue flash. I woke up in a cold glass room, surrounded by strange voices. Jack's hands clenched. You were just a child. They didn't care, she whispered. They said I was part of their experiment. That humans might have something their species lacks, something called emotional endurance. They raised me, trained me, changed my body so I could survive in space. But I never forgot home. I never forgot you. Jack's chest tightened. And now you've escaped them. She looked up, barely. I stole one of their ships, but they're tracking me. I don't have long. Jack knelt in front of her. Then, we'll stop them. She shook her head. It's not that simple. They marked me. There's a tracker in my blood. I'm not just running there using me as bait. Jack blinked. Bait? For what? For you. Double quotes silence. Jack stared at her in shock. Me? Why? Ellie looked away, then whispered, because I kept saying your name. Even as they tried to erase my memories, I clung to one thing, Jack Marlowe. They found your name in my old school files. They know I would come looking for you. Jack sat back, stunned. His name had become a target. All because a little girl never stopped remembering. You risked everything just to see me again. He asked. Ellie's voice trembled. I needed to know if I still had a home. Someone remembered me not as a test subject, not as an alien, but as Ellie. Just Ellie. Jack felt his throat tighten. He remembered her now, the shy girl who laughed at his silly jokes, who cried when her dog died, who once swore they'd be best friends forever. "You never stopped being Ellie," he said firmly. "Not to me." Her eyes shimmered. She hadn't cried in years. The Nerex had trained emotion out of her. But in this small, hidden room, with this one human, the tears returned. Suddenly, the floor rumbled. A low mechanical hum echoed through. The metal walls. Jack stood up. "They've found the station." Lee rose to her feet. "Then we don't have time." He grabbed a power core from the shelf and stuffed it into his tool bag. "Come with me. I have an idea." As they moved quickly through the maintenance tunnel, Jack looked over at her. "There's a reason you remembered me," he said. "Just like there's a reason I never let anyone close." Ellie looked at him, confused. "You were my only real friend," Jack said. "After you vanished, I never trusted anyone again." For a moment, despite the danger outside, the two shared a silent truth. They had been broken by the same event. And now, they were both here, whole again. But only if they survived what came next.